what's going to be just as interesting to me is we've never seen a quarterback market like this. Last year we saw a market that had some of the greatest quarterbacks in history all being presented to people at the same time. So you look at it, you had Phillip Rivers as a free agent, you had Tom Brady as a free agent. You know, this was like, wow, I can get one of these guys, but they were kind of past their prime. This year, you've got Deshaun Watson, who's, you know, without a doubt, a top 5 quarterback. And Matthew Stafford, who, when healthy, is that same kind of quarterback, Lance. Matthew Stafford, when healthy, could be a top 7, top 6, top 5 quarterback with the talent that he has and the ability he has to actually run an offense. What do you know about Matthew Stafford? What's going to happen to him in Detroit?
Okay, so funny you quantified that Matthew Stafford, when healthy, becomes an elite NFL quarterback, and that's a big if. And also a big if is if he has weapons. Remember what he did, how he inflated his numbers with Calvin Johnson and the same team with him. So Matthew Stafford, picture this, 45,109 passing yards, 282 passing touchdowns are the most by a player without a playoff win in NFL history. So that's a lot. 74 wins as a starting quarterback is tied for 4th, with most without a postseason win, trailing only Jim Hart, Steve Rogan, and Roman Gabriel. And here's another one. Since Matthew Stafford's rookie season in 2009, Lions receivers led the NFL with 350 drops. Stafford has 7 consecutive seasons throwing for at least 4,000 yards from 2011 to 2017. That is the 5th longest streak in NFL history. However, Stafford hasn't thrown 30 touchdown passes since the 2013 season. So he had 20 plus the last season, and he had 4,000 plus yards as well. And he could benefit with a complete offense around him, a backfield that can punch through the line of scrimmage, and able wideouts that can throw his deep balls. So the front runner for Matthew Stafford has to be the Indianapolis Colts, not just because Pat McAfee is aggressively campaigning for it to happen, but there has been rumors that has been floated that assistant GM Ed Dobbs of the Colts went for an interview for the head GM position of the Lions. And eventually they went for Brad Holmes. So Dobbs goes back to Indianapolis. But rumors have been spreading that the Lions were transparent enough to reveal that Matthew Stafford was on his way out of the Lions. So even before the news broke out, they have been transparent already to all of their candidates this is the situation that you're going to face. You don't have an elite franchise quarterback once you take this position. So with that knowledge, Dobbs goes back to Indianapolis and tells his boss that, hey, Stafford is up for playing. And we know what happened now. Even though Phillip Rivers still has all the tools and all the power to play one more season, he eventually retired because at the back of their mind, they have a great chance of getting a younger and equally talented quarterback as Matthew Stafford.
So there's a couple things that you touched on there. And one of the first things I do want to say is, you're right. Being honest to a coach before you hire him is super important. You don't want to hire somebody and then put him in a situation where he thought he was getting a Matthew Stafford and he's not. And likewise, if you just to go back to the Texans conversation really quick, when the Texans hired David Culley, who very well could be a really, really great guy. I don't know that for a fact, but David Culley is 65 years old. He's never been a head coach. He's never been a coordinator. And I think that was kind of like the best they could get because it was such an unstable franchise with an unstable quarterback position. But when you take over the Detroit Lions and they tell you, hey, listen, we're going to get rid of Stafford and we're going to rebuild. Okay, now we're going to do that. So what are you going to get for Matthew Stafford? That's really the question now. We're not going to have a franchise quarterback, but what asset do we get back for Matthew Stafford? I think you're 100% right. I see 2 destinations possible for Stafford. I see 3. I see San Francisco as a possibility. Matthew Stafford with the run game and those weapons, San Francisco would be deadly out west. This is a dark horse that no one's talking about. I see the Atlanta Falcons possibly making a run at Matthew Stafford somehow, finding out a way to flip Matthew Ryan, bring Matthew Stafford back home. The only thing that people in Atlanta like more than NFL football is college football. and Matthew Stafford played his college career at the University of Georgia, they would love it if he came back there and into that state to be their quarterback for their NFL team. The other team you mentioned, and to me, it looks almost like it's a no-brainer, and it's going to be the Indianapolis Colts. And the biggest holdup for any of these trades is going to be the asset value that people want to get back for somebody like Stafford. Now, correct me if I'm wrong. You're the sports nerd. You know a little bit more about some of this stuff than I do, but I believe Matthew Stafford is 31 years old. And I know for a fact that he's had plenty of injuries and he's missed plenty of games. So to me, that all these things need to be brought into some type of equation to figure out what the value is for a Matthew Stafford. So we talked about Deshaun Watson, saying Deshaun Watson could very well be worth 7 picks. What do you think Matthew Stafford brings back on the open market?
Okay, so because he already has an injury history and he is already in the 30s, I guess he was still worth 1 or 2 first-round draft choices. And then,
Really?
I guess he still has the years. He still has enough in the tank to bring any franchise to a better record, if not the playoffs. So at least he's worth 2 first-round draft picks and 1 or 2 third or fourth round draft choices, plus another player that they would like to get. I guess that's a fair deal because he has proven, Matthew Stafford, that he can play even with a disproportionate franchise like the Detroit Lions, that he can play and he can throw the ball, wing it, and that's why he's still worth like 2 first rounders and a collection of like third or fourth round draft picks.
Yeah, I wouldn't pay that. I wouldn't if as a Steeler fan, that's my team. If Ben Roethlisberger left tomorrow, we had all the cap space in the world, and somebody said, "Would you give up 2 first-round draft picks for Matthew Stafford and take over the Steelers right now?" I would say no, because you're giving away your future. You're giving away your future for somebody that costs $35 million a year. I look at Matthew Stafford and a guy that's got an injury history, which to me is huge. That guy's got a bulky back. He's been hit more times than probably most quarterbacks have over the course of the last 10 years. I would give a second-round draft pick for Matthew Stafford. That's as far as I would go. I may say Matthew Stafford, a second-rounder this year, a third-rounder next year, spread over the picks. You've obviously made it known that you don't want him. That's the difference when you see an asset. When I see an asset, you look at Antonio Brown, who was probably at the time of the trade, when Pittsburgh traded him to the Oakland Raiders, Antonio Brown, if he wasn't the best wide receiver in football, he was one of the 2 best wide receivers in football. Absolutely, positively elite, a difference maker. Coming off a season, I believe he scored 17 touchdowns. He was unstoppable that year, but he had become a locker room problem, and everybody knew that he couldn't stay in Pittsburgh anymore. He just couldn't stay there. So Pittsburgh was put in a position where they had no choice but to move him. And what was the value of that? The value of that, because it was known to the public that he wasn't welcome in Pittsburgh anymore and that they had to get rid of him, was a 4th rounder. So when you come out and you tell me that these guys are worth these huge, huge amounts, if there's no real huge market for them, and I don't know that Matthew Stafford's going to have a huge market, Deshaun Watson's a different conversation. 25 years old, elite quarterback. I don't think he's hit a ceiling yet. I think he's still going up. Matthew Stafford, you get what you get. I think you get 3 years out of him. Hopefully he doesn't get hurt along the way. He improves your football team, but I don't see Matthew Stafford being more than a second-round pick. That's just my opinion. Let's see which one of us is closer. You think it's 2 first-rounders. I think he's a second-rounder. You think Deshaun Watson is 7 picks. Mine was a little different than yours, but whatever.